The night Ethan Wallace left Isabella Carter was one she would never forget. Rain lashed against the windows of their small suburban home, drumming out a cruel rhythm while her husband packed his suitcase. His words cut deeper than the thunder outside. He said he was tired of living with someone who had no spark, someone who didn't excite him anymore. Standing in the doorway, Isabella clutched the edge of her robe, feeling as though the floor beneath her had disappeared. When the door slammed shut and the sound of his car faded into the storm, silence wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She sat on the couch for hours, numb, trying to understand how a man who had once promised her forever could discard her so easily. In the weeks that followed, the town whispered. Neighbors who once greeted her with warm smiles now looked at her with a mixture of pity and curiosity. At the grocery store, two women whispered behind a pyramid of apples, "That's Ethan's ex. He left her for Sophie Langford, the girl from uptown." Sophie, the younger woman who worked at a trendy boutique downtown, became the shiny new chapter in Ethan's life, while Isabella was relegated to the role of the discarded wife. Invitations to dinners dwindled, friends who had once crowded her home with laughter stopped calling, and loneliness became her constant companion. She felt humiliated, not only because Ethan had left her, but because he had chosen to do it so publicly, parading Sophie on his arm through town as if he were flaunting a trophy. Rachel Turner, her lifelong friend, refused to let Isabella drown completely. Rachel showed up one morning with a tray of cinnamon rolls and a firmness in her voice that left no room for argument. "You can't let him define the rest of your life, Bella," she said, using the nickname only old friends dared to. "I know it hurts, but you've got to stand up. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of something else." Those words sounded hollow at first, but Rachel's persistent encouragement sparked something small inside Isabella. She realized that sitting in her pajamas, replaying Ethan's betrayal, wasn't going to change her circumstances. Something had to shift. The gym became her first battlefield. At the beginning, Isabella hated it. The early mornings, the soreness in her muscles, the feeling of being out of place among toned bodies and confident postures. She tripped on the treadmill once, cheeks burning when a trainer rushed to help her up. Yet, she returned the next day, and the day after that. Slowly, her body responded. She began to recognize herself in the mirror again, not the broken woman abandoned in the rain, but someone reclaiming her strength. Changing her eating habits followed naturally. Rachel introduced her to farmers' markets, where Isabella discovered the pleasure of colorful vegetables, fresh herbs, and meals that nourished not only her body but her spirit. But physical strength wasn't enough. Ethan had often mocked her for lacking ambition, reminding her that he was the one who provided, while she worked a modest marketing job. His words lingered like poison, pushing her to prove him wrong. With trembling hands, Isabella signed up for an executive marketing course at a nearby university. The first day was terrifying, sitting among sharp young minds. She felt like an imposter. Yet as weeks passed, she found her rhythm. She stayed up late studying, poring over case studies, and discovered that she not only belonged there but thrived. Her professors noticed her dedication, her classmates sought her out for group projects, and Isabella realized she was far more capable than Ethan had ever given her credit for. Her progress didn't go unnoticed in town, though not everyone was pleased. One evening, as she walked out of the university building, she overheard a voice she recognized instantly. It was Sophie, laughing with another woman at a nearby cafe terrace. "She thinks she's someone now because she goes to the gym and takes classes. But Ethan told me she'll always be the same dull Isabella." The words stung, but instead of breaking her, they fueled her determination. She no longer wanted Ethan back, nor did she crave Sophie's approval. What she craved was her own respect. Months stretched into a year, and Isabella's life transformed in subtle but powerful ways. Her wardrobe changed. She no longer hid in oversized sweaters, but chose clothes that reflected her new confidence. She traveled for seminars, first to Chicago, then to Milan. It was in Milan that she stood on a balcony overlooking the Duomo, sipping an espresso and feeling a spark of joy she hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Ethan had walked out, she wasn't defined by what she had lost, but by what she had gained. Still, back home, the shadow of her ex lingered. Ethan paraded Sophie at charity events, often making a show of their expensive clothes and glamorous lifestyle. Sometimes, when Isabella crossed paths with them, Ethan's smirk carried an unspoken message: "Look what you missed." It infuriated her, but she resisted the temptation to engage. She had learned that silence was often the sharpest response to arrogance. Yet, deep down, she knew there would come a day when their paths would collide in a way that neither of them could ignore. She just didn't know how soon that day would arrive. The letter arrived on a Friday afternoon. A thick ivory envelope slipped through the slot of her door, its weight unusual. She tore it open absent-mindedly, expecting another advertisement, but instead found herself staring at embossed letters, an invitation to the wedding of Ethan Wallace and Sophie Langford. At the bottom, a handwritten note in Ethan's familiar scrawl twisted her stomach into knots. "Hope you can make it. It will be good for you to see what real happiness looks like." Isabella stood frozen in her kitchen, the audacity of his words sinking in. He hadn't just invited her. He had intended to humiliate her once more. She sank into a chair, the invitation trembling in her hands. For a moment, the old Isabella, the one who cried on the couch in her robe, threatened to resurface. But then she thought of Rachel's unwavering support, of the hours she spent pushing herself in the gym, of the late nights studying until her eyes blurred. She thought of the woman she had become, and something inside her shifted. If Ethan wanted her to witness his version of happiness, perhaps she could show him a version of herself he had never expected. That night, Isabella called Rachel. Her voice shook at first as she explained, but by the end of the call, she felt a strange calm. "He thinks he's going to humiliate me," Isabella said. "But maybe it's time I show him he doesn't hold power over me anymore." Rachel's laughter rang through the line, warm and fierce. "Now that's the Bella I know. And trust me, when you walk into that wedding, they won't know what hit them." The decision wasn't fully formed yet, but the seed was planted. Ethan's invitation, meant to wound her, had instead become a challenge, a stage on which she would reclaim her dignity. She didn't know exactly how she would do it, but she knew one thing. She would not show up as the broken woman he expected. Isabella's resolve after receiving Ethan's wedding invitation grew steadily over the following months. She began meticulously planning not only how she would appear at the wedding, but how she would fully embody the woman she had become, the confident, radiant, unstoppable version of herself. Her mornings started with runs along the riverside, the crisp air filling her lungs and reminding her of how far she had come from the tearful nights on the couch. She alternated cardio with strength training, her muscles becoming lean and defined, a visible testament to her perseverance. Nutrition became a joyful exploration. She learned to cook meals that were both nourishing and decadent, experimenting with flavors that lifted her spirits and her health. Her reflection in the mirror no longer sparked self-doubt. Instead, she saw resilience and poise staring back at her. Professional growth followed her personal transformation. Isabella's work ethic in her executive marketing course paid off, and soon she was offered an internship at a multinational firm. She traveled for business seminars, which took her to cities she had only dreamed of visiting: Paris, London, and eventually Milan. Each journey expanded her horizons, exposing her to new cultures, ideas, and people who respected her intellect and creativity. It was in Milan, amid the elegance of cobblestone streets and the grandeur of the Duomo, that she first met Adrian Blake. Their meeting was serendipitous. She accidentally bumped into him at an art exhibit, causing a small sculpture to teeter dangerously. Adrian's quick reflexes saved the piece, and his smile, genuine and warm, left a lingering impression. Unlike Ethan, Adrian didn't exude condescension or entitlement. He was attentive, kind, and genuinely interested in who she was, not what she could offer him. As weeks passed, their acquaintance deepened into companionship. They explored Milan together, strolling along the canals, savoring gelato under the afternoon sun, and sharing stories of past heartbreaks that neither had fully disclosed before. Adrian listened without judgment when Isabella recounted her life with Ethan and the humiliation that followed. His responses were thoughtful, empathetic, and sometimes laced with gentle humor that made her laugh when she least expected it. "You know," he said one evening as they watched the sunset from a rooftop terrace, "life has a funny way of bringing us to exactly the people who actually see us, not the ones who left us behind." Those words etched themselves into her heart, a quiet counterpoint to the bitterness Ethan had once instilled. While her connection with Adrian blossomed, Isabella continued to refine her image. She worked with a stylist to choose outfits that reflected her sophistication and elegance, carefully selecting pieces for the wedding. A champagne silk gown that shimmered in the light, flowing in all the right places without ever appearing ostentatious. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and she chose makeup that accentuated her features without hiding them. Each detail was a declaration of self-respect and confidence. On the night she finalized her look, she stood before the mirror and felt a surge of pride. She had transformed from the woman Ethan had dismissed into someone who commanded attention and admiration, not through wealth or status, but through poise, intelligence, and self-assuredness. The anticipation of the wedding, which initially carried a twinge of anxiety, evolved into a sense of purpose. She and Adrian discussed how to approach the event with grace and subtle defiance, ensuring their presence would speak volumes without descending into petty revenge. "We won't stoop to humiliation," Adrian said firmly, holding her hand. "We'll simply show up as the best version of ourselves." That's more powerful than anything he could have imagined. Isabella nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle comfortably in her chest. They planned their arrival in a Rolls-Royce, a sleek symbol of understated elegance that contrasted with Ethan's overt displays of wealth and status. The idea was not to compete, but to exemplify the life she had built, the love she had found, and the dignity she had reclaimed. The day of Ethan Wallace's wedding finally arrived, and Isabella Carter stood before her full-length mirror with a quiet thrill pulsing through her veins. She adjusted the silk champagne gown one last time, its fabric flowing elegantly around her form, soft yet commanding, a perfect reflection of the woman she had become. Adrian Blake, standing beside her, gave her a reassuring nod. "You're going to leave everyone speechless," he said, his voice calm, confident, and warm. She smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression that radiated power and serenity. For the first time in years, she felt untethered from the past, unshakable in her sense of self. The wedding invitation that had once threatened humiliation now felt like an unexpected stage upon which she could demonstrate her growth and strength. The drive to the venue in the Rolls-Royce was smooth, the soft purr of the engine a steady heartbeat beneath the city's hum. Isabella felt every eye on the car as they approached, the subtle, appreciative glances following them in the way she had never experienced before. She had always imagined that her revenge would come in sharp words or calculated disruption, but now she understood. Her presence, radiant and poised, would speak louder than any confrontation. Adrian squeezed her hand, anchoring her in the moment, and she leaned slightly against him, grateful for the unwavering support and love that had transformed the trepidation she had once felt into quiet confidence. As they arrived, the doors of the Rolls-Royce opened, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers from the venue. Guests paused mid-conversation, subtle murmurs spreading across the terrace as heads turned toward the entrance. Ethan's reaction was immediate. His jaw tightened, eyes widening in disbelief as he caught sight of Isabella stepping out with Adrian at her side. Sophie Langford's bright smile faltered, her confidence cracking just enough for the truth to shine through. She had underestimated the depth of transformation Isabella had undergone. Isabella walked gracefully, every step deliberate, aware of the subtle power she now wielded through poise and presence alone. She carried herself not with arrogance, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had rebuilt herself entirely from the ruins of heartbreak and humiliation. Inside the reception hall, the whispers intensified. Guests who remembered Isabella from years past were captivated by the evolution in her demeanor, the way she radiated self-assurance and charm. Adrian guided her through introductions, each interaction deliberate yet effortless, leaving a trail of admiration and silent envy in their wake. When they reached Ethan, he opened his mouth as if to speak, but words failed him. Isabella extended a polite smile and offered her hand in greeting not out of obligation, but as a signal of the dignity she had reclaimed. "Congratulations, Ethan," she said, her voice steady, calm, and imbued with a warmth that seemed almost ironic to those who had once doubted her. Her composure sent a clear message. She had moved beyond bitterness, and her success, presence, and newfound love were proof of that. The evening flowed with elegance and subtle triumph. Isabella and Adrian mingled, sipped champagne, and shared light, confident conversation that drew attention without seeking it. Every glance, every graceful movement, reinforced the reality of her transformation. She noticed Ethan attempting to approach her later, phone in hand, likely preparing yet another message laden with regret. She resisted the urge to engage, the urge to justify herself or validate his feelings, understanding fully that his remorse stemmed not from genuine care, but from the loss of control he once wielded. Isabella's victory was not in public humiliation, but in her self-respect, her flourishing career, and the love she had found with Adrian. As they departed quietly from the reception, leaving whispers and astonished glances behind, Isabella felt a serene sense of closure. She had arrived at the wedding as a testament to resilience, growth, and empowerment, a living embodiment of triumph not born from revenge, but from dignity and self-realization. Days later, Ethan sent multiple text messages. The first was tentative, expressing a desire to talk, and the next confessed regret over letting her go. Isabella read each message calmly, the past no longer dictating her emotions. With a composed hand, she deleted them all, understanding that true victory lay not in responding to his attempts at control, but in living fully and unapologetically as the woman she had become. Adrian's presence reminded her that love built on mutual respect and admiration far outweighed the hollow gestures of someone who once sought to belittle her. Isabella smiled, feeling a sense of peace and empowerment that no message, no appearance, and no insult could diminish. She had transformed heartbreak into strength, humiliation into elegance, and the cruelty of the past into the triumph of the present. Her life now resonated with dignity, success, and a love that was authentic, unwavering, and deeply nourishing. Moral lesson: Isabella's journey reminds us that true triumph lies not in revenge, but in self-respect, growth, and authentic love. Life may challenge us with heartbreak, humiliation, or betrayal, yet these moments can catalyze transformation. By investing in ourselves, embracing resilience, and surrounding ourselves with those who lift us, we redefine our narrative. Isabella's story demonstrates that dignity, success, and meaningful companionship carry far more weight than superficial victories. Every setback is an opportunity to evolve, every end a chance for a powerful new beginning. Remember, your worth is never defined by those who leave, shine, grow, and thrive. Like the video, subscribe for more inspiring stories, share with friends, and comment how you would handle a challenge like Isabella's.